Pardon my little raspy voice. I had on the way here I had a sneezing and coughing attack, and I have no reason why, and wasn't ready for that. And had some crazy looks at the stoplight, people looking at me, and I've got my drink in one hand and I'm sneezing in another, and just wasn't going well. Good to see everybody this morning. We are talking and studying about the speech that Paul Harvey gave back in 1965 and how it applies in today's world. And there's a lot that it does apply to. This week we're going to talk about the section that he had called "Give from those that have to give those that want, until I have killed the incentive of the ambitious." And so there's a lot of things that we can talk about in there, especially when you look at financial, money, the government, different things of that nature. We're supposed to be good stewards of God's money. And I think in today's society, more so probably in the last 15 to 20 years, everybody's trying to find a way to make a quick buck, however they can. So I don't know how many of you watch Fox News, but you know Douglas County was on, was it Fox News or Good Morning America? Fox and Friends last week. Anybody know that? Anybody want to know why? It's because in the last 3 weeks, there have been 2 murders. The first one was by Kroger at Fairburn Road and Douglas Boulevard. The second one was at Jesse Davis Park. All of those involved were under the age of 19. Everything involved, want to take a guess? Drugs and money. Both of them. And so they had, and I didn't get to see it. Jen was telling me about it. I forgot. I don't know if it was the sheriff or the deputy that they interviewed on Fox and Friends, because crime on our side of town over here has skyrocketed. Gangs are very prevalent now, if you're not aware of that. I have, 4th of July, they have the 4th of July parade, if that's what you want to call it now, through Douglasville, because this last one was pretty bad as far as what we had. But they were giving out, I like wearing these little rubber wristbands. You know, we used to get them at camp in Agahey all the time, and down in Valdosta. But they were passing out "Too Cool for Gangs," Douglas County Sheriff's Office. That's what they've been working on probably for the last 5 years. The killing at the Kroger, so it's the apartment complex across the street from Kroger, they found a young man laying in a parking lot with money and drugs laying around. Come to find out, the 17-year-old that did it was arrested, and so was his mother, because she was trying to cover it up. And so, for some reason, in America, hard work is kind of a lost thought. And I think, personally, I think the government has a lot to do with it. We're supposed to help those that need help. Trying to put this trying to put this the right way, because some of these topics you never know how to express it. But so my wife and I, we know several people that abuse the system, whether it comes to unemployment, food stamps, different programs that the government offer. And they're good programs because there are those that need them. But then there are a lot of those that take advantage of it. And I think prior to COVID, it was pretty bad. There's a lot of stuff, but I think post-COVID, we've created an extremely lazy and quick to earn money generation. I know a company that I worked for during COVID, employees were getting more money from the government than they got paid 40 hours a week.
There were people working and collecting COVID unemployment at the same time.
Yes.
This manager at this truck stop in South Georgia said all of her employees were collecting COVID unemployment while working.
And mm-hmm.
And they're going to end up paying one way or another. I know the system is abused. Okay? I'm well aware the system is abused. What I worry about is the people who need it and don't get it.
Yeah.
The people who are in need, and we overlook them because we say, well, there's just so much abuse, I'm just not going to worry about it. And I think Jesus deals with that when he says that we are to give freely to the poor. We will always have the poor with us. And we need to be careful that we don't get jaundiced, that we don't get so callous against those people who are abusing, and we know they're abusing. Like you say, you've got people that you see every day abusing it. That we don't worry about those people who are really, really need help.
Mm-hmm. We focus on the wrong thing.
Yeah, we're focused.
It makes it harder for those that need it to get it, because
Right.
we get denied a lot because of people that are.
You have to jump through rings of fire
Yes.
to get it, as to where other ones almost just fill out the paperwork. Yes, sir.
I think I'm not going to speak for anyone else. I'm going to speak for Dwayne. I think Dwayne gets a callous mindset sometimes when I see people on the side of the road. Because that, I think what Bruce is talking about kind of falls into that category. When we see people on the side of the road and they're holding up signs, and Mark and I, we always talk about this one family that actually have children with them. And we often question, are you teaching your children this is the way to maintain and survive? Not try to go get a job. And if you're feeding a child at a young age, what drive do they have to go out and be productive and to get a job? And so it does prick my heart, but probably not the way they want it to be pricked.
Amen,
because
bro.
it frustrates me to see when parents have children out there and the traffic is so bad and that people don't pay attention because they're on their phones. You know, I often think about the children's safety. I get it. Some people do have
Legitimate reasons.
rough situations, right? But is that the only avenue for assistance? And it does bring about some probably some ill thoughts. And I have to remind myself of Galatians 6, which Bruce was quoting from, Galatians 6, 9, and 10. Whenever we have the ability to do good, do good. Galatians 6 doesn't say make a judgment. It just says when you have the ability to do it, do it.
As hard as being human. It's hard. That first thought comes through and you're like, back up. Because Ron goes to the grocery store and I get behind someone that is wearing really nice clothes and has really nice jewelry on and pull out their card and go, and I see that their buggy is rounded and what they have in it, and they go, and then Ron probably has bad attitude, and then as he's walking through the parking lot, he sees the vehicle that they get in, and take a breath and just say, everybody has to answer for stuff eventually.
As you're saying, Ron, they have the nicest clothes, the nicest stuff in their buggy, and stuff like that, and it would be so frustrating because the person behind them was having to pay $100, and you could tell they were struggling, and they needed the help. And like Lindsay was talking, the system, it's messed up.
Yeah, it is. Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord and not unto men. So this particular section of Paul Harvey's thing really struck a nerve with me because especially, and I don't brag on my kids hardly at all. I really don't. My wife will tell you that. But they're hard workers. They all have jobs. They've all had jobs since they were able to get jobs because mom and dad said, we're taking care of the needs. You have to take care of the wants. Depending on, what it is or whatever the case may be. And they see it now too, especially going home after church because, we live in Douglasville off of Chapel Hill, and almost every Sunday at Thornton Road and Maxim, there's a gentleman with a sign that says, unemployed, need to support my family. And right behind it is Wendy's with a sign that says $500 sign-on bonus. Apply. And I'm scratching my head going, just like you were saying, no children there, but what are adults showing the younger generation? This is the way. Hold the sign up. And so I looked up some stuff from the government just regarding COVID. So we had two acts. There was the CARES Act, and then there was the American Rescue Plan. This is all COVID-related money that's been sent out across the United States, just in general. So, and I didn't look, but I'm assuming it's the past administration and the current administration kind of overlapping on those things. So it's $4.5 trillion of your hard-earned money that has been approved to use wherever needed during COVID times. So far, 3.8 has been spent. Georgia got $73.4 billion of that money to take care of whether it's unemployment benefits or COVID pay or everything like that. COVID has really incentivized a lazy generation because, and I know that there's a lot of people that needed it, and there's a lot of people that didn't need it. The company that I worked for, some employees before taxes would make about $800 a week. They were getting $1,700 from the government during COVID. Makes no sense. So now what's happening, not being good stewards of God's money, is these individuals that wasn't good with money in the beginning, they have went out and they have purchased all different kinds of wants instead of needs. The repo industry has went up on cars 400% from the previous 4 years. It's where this money from the government has been just freely sent out as often as that it has, and then individuals that aren't good with money have went out and TVs. And I just hit like 4 of the big items. Cars, the car industry shot up. Electronic industry shot up. The jewelry industry shot up. One thing that went down, I want to take a guess. Giving at church. And just scratches your head and go, what are we doing? There's in a previous study, I looked at Genesis 6:6. I think it's probably one of the scriptures that probably makes the hair on my arm stand up more than anything. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. That can kind of be an umbrella of a bunch of different topics, a bunch of different things. Now, obviously, this was going back to the beginning and how man really wasn't doing anything that was pleasing to God. And so I look at where we are today, it's kind of in that boat too. Yes, ma'am.
There is hope. Where's the hope? You remember? But God found one man and his family who was still faithful. There is a remnant of hope. And there has been a remnant of hope throughout history. God has always found a group, a remnant of people who are faithful to him. And it can be traced throughout time. Go to Hebrews 11. Go anywhere you want, and you can find that God has a remnant of people that are faithful Christians. And that's what's keeping us going.
Yeah, and I think the church is really in a good spot now to really explode and expand and grow. because it's out there. There's people out there that want to hear it. I just think sometimes we just get into a rut, and it's like when you see the things that we've described, just from today, you're like, oh.
And what Harvey said in, what was it, 63, 64, is true. And it was true then, and it's true today. And just so you won't get upset, it's going to be true 50 years from now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is.
Okay, there is still work for us to do. If we'll get out, the only thing that'll change that is us going to work. And if we'll go to work, we can do that. There are people out there who are dying to hear the gospel. Where are we? Are we teaching?
So it sounds like you're saying the harvest is plentiful.
Guess what? Yes, it is. The harvest is plentiful. Where are the workers? Where are the workers? Now, I haven't got out much lately for a variety of reasons. But when my PT people come and my OT people come, we talk about Christ. In fact, I brought one of them over here. My goal was to go up and down the stairs without falling and without having to pull myself up and down the stairs. And he said, well, what do you do here? And I went up and I sang 2 or 3 songs, and he says, where is your piano? We don't have a piano. Well, why don't you have a piano? And we talked about Christ and what we were doing here. And that's interesting. Well, where do you go to church? Do you worship? Not as much as I should. And I invited him to come and invited him to study. That's what we need to do every time we have a chance to do it.
Yeah, I think it's like I was saying, last week, kind of getting out of your comfort zone and just have that conversation. Because there'll be a conversation that will give you an opportunity to bring something up, no matter whether it's sports related, whether it's movie related, whether it's community related. There will be something, but the thing about it is we just have to be ready when that opportunity presents itself to do that. Talking about what happened earlier in Douglas County, the youth of today, and I guess that would be, I would say probably from 13 to 20, they've just got everything stacked against them. And we have to, as a church and a community, somehow we have to break that. We have to break that barrier. Chris Parks is the sheriff for Douglas County, and he does a lot of stuff. Like he'll have classes on the weekends where he'll bring people in that were in gangs before and they survived getting out of the gang and talk about their history and why they got in it. And it was all about money, prestige, and impressing people. I'm sure some people have you heard of Dave Ramsey? So I've taken Dave Ramsey's class a couple of times, and it helped us out. I made our older kids sit through it as well, and his class has got good principles. Not everybody is a Dave Ramsey fan, but he's got 3 quotes that I use all the time, talking. We buy things we don't need with the money we don't have to impress the people we don't like. If you will live like no one else, later you can live like no one else. I use that one a lot, especially when the kids, when I try to get them to differentiate between a need and a want. You know, like they'll talk like, Dad, you're cheap. You don't spend no money. And I said, because when that day comes, when me and your mom are empty nesters, you're not going to see us. Because we're going to go do whatever we want to do. I said, but you got a place to sleep, you got food, you got clothes. Occasionally I'll give you a little spending money to go do something. And I said, you're not neglected. I said, but 10 or 15 years from now, if I'm still around and you have grandkids, I'm going to laugh because I'm going to give them more money than I ever gave you and spoil them. And you're going to lose your mind because they're going to be asking you for money. And they're like, no. You're going to look back and go, wow, I hate it when Dad does that. That's what he said it too. I'm like, yeah, it's coming. It's just a matter of time. But the other one was pray like it depends on God, but work like it depends on you. And that's what, we've tried to instill into our kids, is that eventually we're not going to be here. So y'all need to have a good work ethic, a good foundation of what to do when it comes with your money and finances. And I know when I had that conversation with my parents, it went in one ear and out the other. And I'm sure it's the same, with some of the conversations with our kids. Proverbs chapter 22 has a lot of good stuff in it. I'm going to read the whole chapter and talk about a couple of them. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold. The rich and the poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of all of them. A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. By humility and by the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. Thorns and snares are in the way of the perverse. He who guards his soul will be far from them. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is a servant to the lender. He who sows iniquity will reap sorrow, and a rod of his anger will fail. He who has a generous eye will be blessed, and he who gives of his bread to the poor. Cast out the scoffer, and contention will leave. Yes, strife and reproach will cease. He who loves purity of the heart has grace on his lips, and the king will be his friend. The eyes of the Lord preserve knowledge, but he overthrows the words of faithless. The lazy man says, there is a lion outside. I shall be slain in the streets. The mouth of the immortal woman is deep in pit. He who is adored by the Lord will fall there. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of correction will drive it far from him. Paddling needs to be back in school. I'll just put that one right there. That is my personal opinion. And I have told my children while they were in school, if they ever ask for a vote, I will vote for me and your mother, yes.
What's so bad though is, everybody knows different about children, but if you take a little child into a store and they're screaming and hollering, and then you paddle them in public, somebody reports you. That is not right.
No, and it's not. And that's, society is very fickle when it comes to that. And I remember one time, and if Freddie happens to be watching, sorry, Freddie. We went, well, I didn't go, but it was my wife and her best friend, and the kids went to Walmart or something, and this was 20 years ago, maybe, even longer. One of the kids flopped down on the floor and just started throwing a tantrum. And just kept going and going. And our good friend, she's just been overwhelmed. She's got, 3 kids, and this one here is just acting like a fish out of water, basically on the concrete floor. And, my wife was telling me about it. And all I could picture in my mind is me. Is when that happens, is just reaching down and grabbing said child by the belt loops, and I will make a scene, period. And they know that because it's happened. And that's just where, and they're our friends their kids are great. But that's just one of those things to where when it happens, you got to, as they say, nip it in the bud right then and there without no hesitation or anything. And I see it happening today, and instead of the parents applying discipline, the stuff that comes out of their mouth makes me want to go over and grab them and go, why are you talking to your child that way? The language that comes out of their mouth. Like, I'd like to go over and just grab them and just, shh. Huh? Thank them. Yeah, because the crazy thing is like what Brother Dwayne was saying, what are you showing and training your children? This is how to do it? I want you to come with me and hold up a sign that says we need money. Oh, I'm just going to yell at you in the store instead of snatching your hiney up and making it warm. Drives me crazy. Just drives me crazy.
We had a brother came here, man, probably 10 years ago, Brother Cobb. He came here in our seminar. For a minute, he broke out and talked about parenting. And I remember this distinctly when he talked about when children act out like that. They're looking for attention. The wrong thing you should do is ignore them. Give them the attention that they're looking for.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. DFAX will be calling you today if you did that. Yeah. So I love telling this story. My wife probably already knows the one that I'm going to tell. Josh, anytime we went somewhere, he had to be first. He had to be in front of the group 20, 30 feet, whether it was just us as a family going to the store or going to a youth event or whatever. Always had to be first. So we were at Arbor Place Mall one time, and I don't know, he was probably, 6, 7-ish, somewhere around there. And I always tell him, it's like, look, stay with the family. Just, so we know where everybody's at, Gone. I'm like, okay. Challenge accepted. And so I made Jen, Chase, Tyler, and Olivia hide behind Dairy Queen in the mall. Josh is running around. He's looking at video games and everything. And so I'm standing behind the pole. I wished I had a picture He turned around. There is no Pinkston in sight anywhere. And you could automatically see the terror come across his face. And then I'm obviously fighting with Mom, because Mom's about ready to come unglued, seeing said child, meeting Mom right away. And I'm like, no, just wait. And he looks around after, I don't know, this probably maybe 30 or 40 seconds. Seemed like an eternity to him and her. And I just step out from behind the pole. And he sees me. Who's he go to? Mom. He goes straight to Mom, fear in his eyes, crying after they bond and do everything. That Dad pulls him off to the side, and I'm like, look, what if someone just snatched you? How you feel is how we would feel. And so you have to do those lessons when they present themselves. He'll never forget that feeling. Especially as all of them grow older, and Tyler's, with his 2 children, the same way. It's the same way, because if you just let them run wild like some parents do, they're all over the place. This drives me crazy too. How does a parent not know where their child is at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when they're between the ages of 10 and 15? Now, the 2 teenagers that died, they were 17, but how do they not know what's going on? Makes you think that. Because the things that they're doing is not what God wants them to do. The way they're trying to make money, the way that they're trying to get things, the way that they're... One second. There was another case in Douglas County, and this was maybe 2-3 months ago. The young man that shot his sister accidentally, or the young boy. So 13-year-old, ordering parts online to build pistols. 13. Sets up a deal at his mom's house. This is over behind Chick-fil-A on Highway 5. Orders it, builds it, sets up a deal at his house to sell the gun to another individual. That individual, and I don't forget how old that gentleman, well, kid, I mean, he was like a teenager, tries to rob the 13-year-old from the gun. They get into shooting, and the 13-year-old's sister gets shot and dies. There's so many questions there. Where's Mom and Dad? And I don't even know what that picture is. Where's Mom and Dad with those children, working with them, and then how are they buying? How's this 13-year-old buying parts online to build a gun? And then turn around and then trying to sell it to make money, to do fill in the blank. None of it's good. Yes, ma'am.
door is not your door, it's my door. I go in your room, I search your room, I look at anything I want to in your room because it's in my house. My children have that same rule in their houses now.
You might get sued for invasion of privacy.
I don't worry about those standards because I'm still sticking with the Bible.
And there's a lot more of that that's needed. Yes, ma'am.
I'm so thankful that my mom and dad were strict on my little brother and myself when we were growing up. Now, when I was 16, I didn't. But, you know, I mean, I was brought up in the church, and I'm so thankful for that. I just wish the kids nowadays would have a better relationship with God and with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not there. I mean, I worked at the school system in Captain for 24 years, and some of the stuff that I saw and some of the words that would come out of a kindergartner's mouth, I mean, my mom would cut my head off.
Yeah, I've told our kids numerous times, probably when I was growing up, or a lot of us that were growing up, it probably was child abuse when discipline came along. And sometimes they don't believe me, and I said, well, ask your grandma and grandpa. My mom, I feared my mom more than my dad. My mom, if it was time for Ron to get warm, remember the orange racetrack back in the day, the little flexible racetrack? We knew each other well. My mom, and I knew, I knew that if I did something wrong, I knew what was coming. And my mom did not spare the rod. But I look back at it now, and she was just doing what parents were supposed to do. Choices have consequences, whether they're good or whether they're bad. And when I made good ones, I got the praise. The bad ones, I got warm. I got the orange racetrack. The Hot Wheels orange racetrack.
I had a web for months, just from that. You wouldn't think something that small would do that much damage, but
My mom broke several wooden spoons over my head.
I can see why.
That's a sore subject with someone I know. Since the beginning of time, one thing that God has instructed is for us to work. What's the first thing that He did with Adam? Put him to work. Put him in the garden. Take care of the garden. And that's the same thing that we have to instill in the kids and our kids and our grandkids as they grow up and grow older, and support them. And even though they may not be at home, they may be grown, they may be 30, 40 years old by now, we're not done. We still may have to approach the conversations a little different now with husband and wife, and let them know, hey, you're doing good, and you could probably do a little bit better in this area. Because what's going to happen when we're not here? Who's going to do it? Who's going to have that spirit inside of them to have that conversation about taking care of one another and supporting one another and pointing things out when they're wrong? as the more I study this, hope is there. To me, we're right at the cusp of, with everything that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years, especially with COVID, there's a lot out there for us to do. I think we've helped people that needed it, maybe more on the financial side and not as much on the spiritual side. And I think that, and I know Ron, speaking for myself, I can do much better on the spiritual side and talking to people about Christ and what I love about it. Thanks for your participation, and we will be back next week, Lord willing.